Welcome to the Baseball Insiders Prospect Show. I am Adam Weinrib, joined by FanSided's prospect guru, Eric Cole. And here come the offseason deadlines. November 18th, Tuesday, the Rule 5 draft protection deadline. The non-tender deadline is Friday, so baseball teams still have 2 days to decide whether or not they're going to tender contracts to their arbitration-eligible guys. They're going to free up a whole lot of roster spots by end of week that they weren't able to free up on Tuesday. But Tuesday was the day they had to come to the conclusion of which prospects they were and were not going to protect in order to keep them out of the Rule 5 draft, which is the winter meetings event where prospects, usually high-tier relievers at AAA, AA, or people that other teams believe they can stash on their big league roster for an entire season, because if you don't, you got to give it back, are taken out of organizations. Many teams pass, many teams don't. Players will be changing hands on that day. Yesterday was the day when roster machinations had to go down in order to get those prospects who teams really believed in taken care of ahead of that important and scary winter event. So who got protected? Who were we surprised didn't? Who's most likely to get taken now that they are technically free if, again, the claiming team is able to take care of them all year? Are there going to be any creepy gambits pulled this year? Never forget when the Padres took Luis Torrens from the Yankees when he was like 18. And everyone was like, dude, they're not going to carry a 18-year-old catcher all year with like single A experience. And the Padres were like, watch us. We definitely are. We're going to hurt his development significantly. He's going to hit 140 and get 12 at-bats, but we are going to do it. And they managed to keep him, and now he's a pretty sturdy Mets backstop. So believe in your dreams, not a Padre. But anything weird like that can happen. What decision surprised us the most? Eric Cole, welcome to the show. Let's break it all down.
Hey, Adam, it's good to be back, honestly. Between the, we had the Silver Slugger rollout, which was kind of a big deal for us. And then I was on vacation last week. Enjoyed some nice time off, just kind of staying home and resting a good bit. And so I'm kind of glad to talk baseball with you again. We talk all the time about, our content plans and all this other stuff, but being able to just dig down and talk minor league stuff, I've actually missed that the last couple of weeks. So it's good to be back.
Yeah, it's been tough to find time amid some big announcements and also the end of the minor league season. What do we do? How do we regroup? Well, folks, the answer is now. We've got good stuff headed your way for the rest of the offseason into this period of time when prospects are getting traded, prospects are getting protected, what have you. So first off, let's start with the unprotected prospects that we think are most likely to get grabbed in the Rule 5 draft. Again, usually these are AA, AAA relief prospects. Typically, if you are a top 10 prospect, you don't get protected. You do. You actually usually do. There are a few that were left unprotected, though, in this instance. If you're far away from the bigs, especially if you've been injured lately, teams usually aren't too worried about you getting stolen. Although, again, the Pirates, we saw an interesting protection decision with the injured Jack Brannigan. They decided have to have him, too worried about somebody taking him. But which unprotected prospects do you think are most likely to be taken by new teams in the upcoming Rule 5 draft?
So, again, you mentioned at the top of the show, for me, the biggest demographic for guys who get picked are relievers with high upside swing and miss stuff that have experience in the high minors. Those are the guys that's like the bulk of the picks. Then you'll have like some like starting pitchers where like they have high minors experience and a team that's like desperate for starting pitching help or maybe doesn't have a lot of money. They might try to take a flyer on those guys. You don't see position players pick very often. It does happen. And sometimes it's like they do famously well. Ender Inciarte was an example where he was a Rule 5 pick and he turned into, a really good player for a number of years. But generally speaking, when I'm looking at the Rule 5, I'm looking for those like relievers that have the experience at least at AA, but honestly, I even focus more at AAA than AA. And because I just think that those guys with that type of swing and miss stuff are the ones that like the teams can justify carrying them on their roster long term because they have to pay $100,000 to pick them. And then if they don't carry them on their active roster, they have to offer them back to their old teams at $50,000. Now, this is only the big league portion of the Rule 5. There's a minor league portion. There are different eligibility, different rules. We're not going to worry about those because predicting that's basically impossible. But so like for me, guys like Creed Willems that we talked about before the show when we were planning, that's not a guy that I thought was going to get protected just because, again, first base catcher profile, just didn't think he was going to get picked. And then, starters or guys who don't have that AAA experience, that don't have swing and miss stuff, I didn't really think of those guys as well. But there are a few names that did come to mind. One, Harrison Cohen, that didn't get protected by the Yankees.
Yep.
has high end stuff at the upper levels, and I could very easily see a team just stashing them on their 40 man and seeing, or on their active roster, and just seeing what happens. A couple other names: Tigers, Jake Miller, again another guy with swing and miss stuff, and Blake Holub from the Brewers are all guys who I think get swing and miss, have that experience in the upper minors, don't have any injury concerns. You were spot on. Like the one way you can make sure that one of your top arms won't get picked in the Rule 5 is if they show anything resembling an injury concern, because that's a good way just to kind of waste $100,000 for no reason. So again, those are kind of the three names that stuck out to me as like, these are guys who could get picked and then get protected, but like there's any number of like potential options. And you are right. There's certainly some chicanery that can and possibly will happen. But there was not any like particularly high ranked prospects that I think someone's going to steal just for the hell of it.
Yeah, it does make me wonder. I mean, the Yankees get plundered every year in this because they do produce a lot of pitching that reaches the AA, AAA level, gets blocked. And Yankee fans, it's easy to be torn here because you want to give these prospects a chance. You want to give our internal names 40-man spots, see them rise up to the bigs. But at the same time, how many rookies do you want in your bullpen in the season where you're supposed to contend, which is every year, according to Yankee fans? So, like, you're going to bring up Harrison Cohen and Eric Raiselman and Brock Selvage, sort of a AA starter who made most of his hay at high A, but yeah, has cracked that AA rotation. He's a top 10 Yankees prospect, but we're not really sure how he fits into the long-term plans. I don't think Selvage is getting taken. Again, it would be an inconvenient fit to try to turn him into a bullpen arm just for a marriage of convenience. Cohen or Raiselman, or even, for the people looking to wonder, okay, which Yankees arms are getting stolen this year. It could be Houston Morrill. I don't think it will be, but he was named the Sally League best relief prospect this year by Baseball America. So another sort of underrated Yankees arm from a strange origin point who is now technically available, but obviously a long shot to have been protected. Brendan Beck, too. What is Brendan Beck? The Yankees' second-round pick from 2021, Stanford's Friday night starter, wore the funeral blacks in one of his final college games because he wanted to send the team he was facing, the CWS, to their death. I think it was Texas Tech. But Brendan Beck was sort of a close to the bigs arm that the Yankees took back in 2021. And then a cavalcade of injuries, injury after injury, shoulder, elbow, Tommy John, pretty much eliminated almost 3 years of his pro career. He was great last year, made it all the way to AAA, and ended up being, Cam Schlittler was the guy they chose when they ran into trouble midsummer. But I think if they'd lost one more arm, it would have been Brendan Beck getting spot starts. He is now available, but like you said, a myriad of injury concerns. So I would totally 50-50 for me. If somebody wants to take a chance on him after what he showed in a healthy 2025, I wouldn't be surprised. But if somebody wants to shy away, given that history, you could be burning $100,000. And nobody likes to do that other than Steve Cohen and David Stearns, who signed Frankie Montas for way more than that last year. So if they're willing to burn $13 million on Frankie, the Yankee, then I guess they might want to burn $100K here. Good points on all those high-end relievers with swing and miss stuff at the upper levels, though. A few top prospects we didn't mention who were not protected, and I think sort of unsurprising here. Again, this is the thing where we know they're a top prospect. Everyone knows it, but they're young. They've been in the system for years, but haven't risen above AA. Like, did the Red Sox really need to protect Miguel Bleis? I don't think so. Henry Leland with the Yankees is someone who's been a sleeper for like 4 years, but keeps sleeping. So like, who's going to take him and put him in their bullpen right now? Like, I don't think anybody wants to do that. Victor Arias, the outfielder with the Blue Jays, these three guys go unprotected, but I also suspect they'll go unclaimed. What protection risks or decisions do you think will pay off for the teams that made them?
So again, a little bit tricky because I think that some of this is top names that probably won't get time in the big leagues, but their teams were concerned enough that they were going to get picked. They were willing to basically shorten their active roster by a spot to make sure that they don't get stolen. And that's, I think, in the case of the Reds, Edwin Arroyo. I think he's a really good prospect. Debatable as to whether or not he would get playing time. Obviously, they have some guy named Ellie De La Cruz playing shortstop right now. We don't know if they're actually going to move him off short, but it does give them an option to do that if he's around. And I just think he's an all-around really good prospect. I'm a little bit skeptical that they're willing to call him up this year, but I think that the Reds are in a spot where they might feel like it's worth the risk in keeping him on their active roster just to make sure that they don't lose him. Because if he plays well in the minor leagues, then he could easily force his way into the big leagues, into like a more of a big league playing time conversation. Now, A couple other names that I liked. I've always had a weird fascination with Cole Drake. Don't really know why, if I'm just being honest. He seems like a very, like, his ceiling is a middle rotation starter. But if the Diamondbacks need something, it's like more just middle of the rotation starters who just do their job. They've had some really good starters over the years at times, a lot of times they've had these starters that just like they'll go 3 innings, get 5 runs, and you're just like, why is this guy up? And they'll cycle in another one of those guys. Whereas in Cole's case, he's a guy who'll probably only give you 5, maybe 6 innings. It might be at the quality start-ish numbers, but they need guys like that. They're losing Zach Gallen this offseason. They don't really have a lot in the way of pitching at the moment, whereas this really exciting young offensive core they have, protecting him made loads of sense to me. Another name that I like a lot is kind of a bit of a flyer was who is somewhat highly regarded is Anthony Nunez from the Orioles. I think, again, another team really needs starting pitching. They have a guy sitting down there in the minors who could actually pitch, and he was probably 50-50 in terms of whether or not he was going to get protected. They opted to do that, and I think that was a smart move, especially in the wake of the news this morning, or I guess late last night, that they traded away Grayson Rodriguez. All of a sudden, they have even more depth questions than they had. So adding him made more sense to me in that context.
If you choose to spend that $100,000 on Drake, you can call that Cole's cash.
I like it.
Is this thing on? Yeah. Is this thing on?
I like it. No, I'm laughing.
Yeah, people are being, wow, everyone is messaging me at the same time. That's very funny. People are hitting me up on Bumble. I'm not even on that. Most surprising protection decision in your mind. I hinted earlier, I kind of can't believe that when push came to shove, the Pirates protected Jack Brannigan coming off throwing shoulder labrum surgery, sort of a mid-20s prospect in their system by consensus. Third baseman, moderate power. I mean, the profile is interesting, but again, so much uncertainty there after last season. Someone's going to take the full year risk on Brannigan. I highly doubt it. But again, the Pirates DFA Dory Moretta and give Brannigan a roster spot. The dual surprise there kind of threw me. What about you? What definitely had you opening your eyes?
Brannigan's a good pick. And when you see guys get protected from the Rule 5 draft who are injured, it's usually because there's very obvious, like they heard from somebody that this team really wanted him, whether there's a trade, maybe there's trade talks, and there was a team that was like in love with Brannigan, and if they expose him, they might just pick him. That's generally when those things happen. I'm not saying it's the only time it happens, but it's certainly, something to think about. Now, for me, Sterling Thompson for the Rockies, I mean, this is like a power bat who put up real numbers last year, and the Rockies stink. Like, they actively suck. And to let just like a guy who could possibly perform well in that ballpark just be exposed to the Rule 5, they are nowhere to me in terms of an organization that just who's on that active roster that you would rather keep over Sterling Thompson. And I think that there's probably like maybe close to a dozen guys that would give his spot to than who's on there right now. So that one I didn't really understand. Again, the protected spots, the ones you always want to keep that would be surprising, require some information that maybe we don't have on like internal metrics on relievers. Like if there's a guy who's like, we don't know, because generally speaking, most relievers are not like top 30 prospects. And I'm not going to pretend that I know every reliever in every organization, right? But if there's organizations that have, multiple organizations have data on a guy who like his spin rate's really good, chase rate's really good, and he projects well, even if he's just a little bit raw, those guys do get picked a lot, but they're not names that are always like on our radar until they happen. Then you look into them a bit and you're like, well, actually, this makes sense. So in terms of surprises, there weren't any like crazy top names that like I think are going to get picked that were not left unprotected. If that makes sense. Thompson being kind of a different sort of case.
Yeah, Chase Rates sounds like a 7th-round pick out of the University of Tulsa, by the way. That's really all I have to add there. Protected prospects who you're most excited to see potentially now get a shot next year. I know that you brought up Edwin Arroyo earlier, and the Reds, he might be the biggest protected name, unless you're a Spencer Jones guy. But I know Arroyo is up there for you, but anybody else who you're like, okay, now that they're on the 40-man, this is becoming a little more real.
I don't know how real it is. But one of the more intriguing names is kind of a dark horse candidate. That's Khalil Watson. This is a guy that when he was in the draft, he was a potential number 1 pick. And then he started falling, and everyone was really confused about it until whispers started coming out that there was like some some real character problems, and he was like calling himself the best player in the draft or something along those lines. And I mean, you can't really do that stuff. Then when he got picked by the Marlins, they took that risk, and he immediately got to the pros and started acting a fool on the field, and then the Marlins got rid of him. But he kind of turned things around with Cleveland, and that's one of those organizations where they're smart enough and are good at player development to where if a guy starts showing something, and we already knew that Watson was a very talented player, if that is true, then him being protected from the Rule 5 makes me think, one, a smart organization thought he was going to get picked, and two, he could be in the running. This is not a Guardians offense that is hard to break into. It is just not. And if Khalil I don't think he's not going to be as good as what his initial draft stock was. But I do think he has a wide-ranging and excited tool set to where if he's, again, like a 260 hitter, he can do a lot of power speed type stuff to do a lot of damage with that. Again, overall, just going to be an interesting name to watch for me.
Agreed. And hey, one team that did a lot of housekeeping yesterday, but maybe has more to do based on the latest intel from Jeff Passan, are those Pittsburgh Pirates. Because I guess at some point they have to maybe make a 40-man and an active roster spot for Connor Griffin. Look, I was not swayed by this rumor that the Pirates were prepared to offer Josh Naylor double what they offered Francisco Liriano, which is $78 million plus. I'm not going to give the Pirates and Bob Nutting free PR on this podcast by acting like that was a major move that they made, because they didn't offer it, and it wouldn't have signed Josh Naylor. He went for $92.5 million to an organization he knew and trusted that he already played for last year. So there's no more "we tried" leak than leaking you were willing to offer $15 million below what someone signed for, but you didn't do it because they signed somewhere else. So Bob Nutting doesn't get free PR from me there.
No.
But the Connor Griffin nugget from Passan, here's a Passan quote. The most exciting, the Pirates are strongly considering giving 19-year-old Connor Griffin, a consensus minor league player of the year in 2025, the opportunity to win their big league shortstop job. Sources told ESPN. While the idea is by no means decided, Griffin wowed scouts by hitting, his incredible stats. The internal models for multiple teams have off-the-charts projections for Griffin, who has also dabbled in center field. I believe that internal models for multiple teams have off-the-charts projections for Griffin. I believe that he's the most exciting option in the Pirate system. I believe he can play short. I believe he can play center. But it still feels like no way on the opening day thing. But what if, yes way, and remember, 2027, which would be his second year if he is on the 2026 opening day roster, threatened by a lockout.
So I think that there's a bit of PR being done here in the sense that the Pirates want their fans to be excited early in the season.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very unlikely that I think he could make it to the big leagues in 2026, but I don't think there's any world where they would give up an extra year of service time to call him up on opening day. I just don't see that happening. Now, there is the prospect promotion incentive to kind of get into play. And by the way, if Connor Griffin was put on the opening day roster, he is your runaway favorite for AL and Rookie of the Year next year. He might get MVP votes. He has that kind of upside. So it's not a completely crazy notion, but every time the Pirates have been given the opportunity to call up a guy and not worry about service time, they've kind of tended to avoid doing so. So I'm skeptical. Now, from a skill set point of view, the only thing I'm concerned about is that he's had so little time to face upper levels of pitching. What I would like to see is Griffin. Now that there's a lot of information on him, all these AAA pitchers and these AAA coaches, they know how to attack him, or at least how they want to attack him, and how he adjusts to those game plans. If he adjusts well to those game plans, it's going to go very well for him, and the arguments to keep him down are smaller. But it might take him a little bit of time to be like, okay, now they kind of know, hey, I struggled against X, or I wasn't particularly good against Y, and they just gave me a steady diet of it. So I just need time to figure out how to do that. It wouldn't be crazy to me if they waited. Again, this feels a lot like the Pirates saying, hey, don't forget about us. Connor Griffin's coming. They were really coy, for example, when they were going to call up Paul Skeens, and it's kind of a similar thing. Like, when's he coming? Well, everyone's interested. Every time the word Paul Skeens appears in an article, does that mean he's coming up? And I think that's what this is. more than a realistic shot that he makes the opening day roster. But from a pure talent and ability standpoint, kind of interesting. Although I hate to put that on a 19-year-old kid.
Well, you got to bench him if he's going to face Y. If he can't hit Y and he can't hit X, just bench him when those guys are on the mound, and then that'll be easy. Just avoid X when he's in the rotation. Your team comes to town. I agree. I would say it's a no from me, but he is probably the runaway NL Rookie of the Year favorite if he does get that opening day nod. Right before we sign off, late last night, you hinted at it, Grayson Rodriguez. The Orioles just cut bait on someone who was their tippy top pitching prospect and was so absent last season that you have to assume that if they're trading him for a 1-year rental in Tyler Ward, the medicals are worse than we could imagine.
Yeah, he's just had a number of arm troubles at varying degrees, lots of setbacks. The stuff is really good, but they were already hinting early, late or early in the offseason and late in the actual season itself, that when he comes back, he might have to shift to the bullpen. And those are not things that teams say about their guys who they have a lot of confidence in terms of health. And again, Ward is another guy who I'm not overly high on. So if that is what it took to pry Taylor Ward from the Angels, then I think that maybe that we're looking at Grayson Rodriguez through old information, and he probably just can't. He's just not going to be that guy anymore.
The Angels believe he will be ready for spring training and make his first start in March or April, probably. I would maybe hedge against that. People are giving the Angels an 80 grade on this trade. I would say that's the case unless there's something we don't know about Rodriguez, and we know a lot about Rodriguez, and what we know hints that, there probably is something more that's going on in private. Well, all that and more on next week's Prospect Show. We'll see you back here. And also, please subscribe to the channel. Join us for the MLB, the Baseball Insiders with Robert Murray. Eric and I will be back next week. Robert and I doing 2 more shows every week, 3 now. We'll see you back here on the Baseball Insiders channel. Appreciate you joining us.